Right, Ariff, it's a pleasure just having the podcast today. How you doing?
I'm very good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
No, no, you're welcome. You're welcome. It's great to have you on. And yeah, I just kind of thought, I would introduce you and you kind of like, you help businesses and you have a lot of, history, many different roles and many different sectors. And, you also are the author of a book as well. But how did you kind of get into this kind of field? Because you got a lot of experience in what you do. I like going into that.
Yeah, I think like a lot of my life, a lot of luck really. I started off as a professional tennis player, believe it or not. Started playing tennis when I was 4 years old, and just loved the sport, obsessed about the sport. And I didn't do my undergraduate degree. Went and played pro tennis, traveled the world, got into some interesting situations, traveling alone as a young person around some difficult parts of the world. Towards the end of my tennis career, I just fell in love with technology. A friend of mine had a laptop, very early days of the internet. He was coding, taught me a little bit about coding, and I just completely fell in love. Stopped playing tennis, and then the entire kind of mission of my life has been driving value through technology. That kind of intersection of how do you use technology to create amazing businesses, whether they're startups, whether they're large corporations, because the world is changing so fast. A lot of that driven by technology. So how do you stay ahead? But more importantly, how do you use technology to create measurable business value? Technology for technology's sake is nice, and I'm interested in it because I'm a technologist. But if you're a business owner, if you're a senior executive, then you need to understand how technology really drives the modern business world.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a really great point. And I think like, technology, is so advanced now and like, what you're capable of doing. I think like a lot of people, your smartphone, for example, is, an amazing piece of technology. And I think a lot of people don't know how to use or kind of operate, that do you know what I mean? That amazing piece of technology. And I think that there's so much that you can do, with your phone, I mean, like overall, with technology, but in business as well, it's so important to be, ahead of the game and constantly kind of pivoting and learning. Because I mean, there's all new technologies constantly, coming into the limelight, and I think like it's great that you tried out tennis and you've been able to explore and gain experience. So that must have been amazing as well.
Yeah, I think tennis teaches you a lot about the modern business world. I think you need to dedicate yourself a lot of hard work, real kind of focus and energy into improvement and getting better. A lot of resilience. I mean, I lost as many matches as I won. So you gain a lot of resilience and you have that dedication from a very early age. So I mean, it's taught me a lot about the business world. Actually, I think there's quite a lot of successful sports people who do go into business. There's a lot of similarities in that. I mean, but you're right. The world is changing so fast. The technology, I mean, it's been said many times, but the technology you hold in your pocket is more advanced than the first mission to the moon. And that's
Mhm.
staggering to think. So, I mean, things like that is just speed of change and the rate at which technology is increasing in power is frightening.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. And I think like, when you mentioned like, excuse me, like sports people, um, a lot of the time, like I said, a lot of sports people go into business because there is that kind of like, mindset aspect and psychology aspect. And, like tennis and sports is a business, but like, you as a person, like, your health and your fitness and, all of you, if your health isn't good, then you're not going to be good on the court. It all kind of interlinks.
Yeah, I think it helps with systems thinking as well. Like you have to think about all as a sports person, you have to think about all aspects of your performance, your health, your fitness, your diet, your mental state, your tactics, your recovery. And I think that kind of systems holistic thinking plays very well into business. I mean, I think if you think about your whole system that you operate in as a business owner or as an executive, I think that makes you a lot more successful because you're thinking about all aspects. You're thinking about how your supply chain impacts you, or how your customers are changing, or how your competition is changing, or how the macroeconomic picture is changing. I think having that systems view, I think makes a really big difference to
Mm.
executives and business owners.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think like, I saw in your profile that, you've been working with some like big companies. And, some of the turnovers are like, 900 million, billion pounds. Like, how'd you kind of deal with that pressure, for working with those kind of companies and trying to, help them in their, in business?
Yeah, I think a couple of things come to mind. I mean, you mentioned some of the companies I've worked with: Lloyds Bank, Morrison's, Booker Group. I was the CTO for the Ministry of Justice, one of the largest government departments in the UK, managing budgets over £1 billion and teams of a few thousand in some instances. Strangely, and I don't want to sound weird, but strangely, it's not easy. I don't think it's that easy, but it's different challenges. Like, I've worked in startups, a lot of startups, and startups are hard, right? Because it's you and you're doing everything. When you've got a couple of thousand people, there's always someone who is a finance expert or a HR expert or a technology expert, whatever it might be. So it's different challenges. When you're managing a very large team in a very large business, the key things that you have to kind of concern yourself with is team dynamics. Are people happy? Are you hiring well? Change management, obviously, when there's lots of people and you're trying to do something different, the change management aspects of having someone who's perhaps done their job in the same way for 30 years, and now you're saying, hey, no, do this new thing. That's very challenging. Getting that kind of change management across an organization that's very large, has perhaps very stale or strict governance. Whereas in a startup, it's kind of all hands to the pump and different challenges. There, you don't have the resources, you don't have the product market fit, you may not have a kind of clear customer traction. So it's different challenges, but I guess the thing that remains the same is you bring yourself to the business every day, you learn, you grow, you're authentic, you care about your people, you care about your customers, and you just try and do something great every day. You don't always do it, but you go in with that objective.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. I think, like, showing up, being genuine and authentic. And that's something I thought about a lot recently. People, really respect you, and you can do a better job, I think, when you're being yourself and trying to do your best. And I think, like you said, in businesses, like you said, people might be doing a certain role or things a certain way for, say, 20 or 30 years, or however long they've been in the business for. And I think, like, that must be difficult going with those those challenges and saying you need to do this now. And I think, like I said, that teamwork and communication and all of these things kind of all interlinked, don't they? And I think that's why you see some business that's successful. They've got that kind of management of teams done right. Like, I did a podcast with somebody, and they said to me, I don't know if you experienced this, and they said that a lot of the issues are like in C-suite in some companies, because you've got people who are higher up. How can I put it into words? Are probably the ones who make the rules or something like that. Like, they said that problems kind of occur in C-suite and micromanaging, that kind of thing.
Yeah, 100%. If you don't have senior board buy-in, it's very difficult for change or transformation to happen. I think when you're trying to do large scale change within an organization, there will be problems, there will be challenges, it will be hard. Fact, period. If you don't have senior board buy-in, then as soon as one of those problems arises, the board won't take action, they won't do something. I mean, having the board compensation or objectives linked to a large-scale transformation is critical. Having a public declaration to the analysts or the city or to stakeholders or to shareholders from the CEO and the C-suite is critical, because then they will stand up when the going gets tough and they will take that action. Change starts from the top, but it is actually driven from the bottom, and you have to have both of those coming together, or you won't drive any kind of successful change of any kind, nevertheless technology change.
Yeah, not definitely, but it must be rewarding, seeing businesses change and develop, and seeing them improve and shift and grow. I mean, that probably isn't like straight away, but to see those results over time.
Yeah, I mean, I like that change aspect of the world. I think what I like to focus on is how can technology drive meaningful impact, and by impact I mean, how does it improve your profit and loss? How does it make your company more valuable? And how can you do that quickly? Because if you want to do a change program using technology, maybe your business is being disrupted, maybe your customers are leaving, maybe your costs are too high, whatever it is that's driving you, you need to show results quickly or people lose interest. You have to get that momentum going. So what are the 3 to 5 things, I call them Goldilocks projects, They're not too small, they're not too big, they're just right. That you can really drive forward quickly, such that people at top go, wow, this is driving value. My bonus is going to increase, or my shareholding is going to increase. So that's great. And the people who are actually in the organization go, wow, this has made my life easier, or faster, or better, or fewer errors, or whatever it is that they're concerned about or that they care about. And if you can do that quickly, then you can really start getting some momentum behind you. And that allows you to make some of the maybe more tougher decisions that are coming later, because people already have that momentum in the organization.
Yeah, no, definitely. And do you think like COVID, I think COVID's highlighted a lot of businesses and you've seen businesses pivot and adapt. Do you think like, you notice things during COVID, in terms of technology with companies? Because it's kind of like, if you don't adapt, if I know a lot of companies that struggle to adapt and, kind of failed, to grow and then, went out of business. Do you think, do you kind of, have you seen that with COVID in technology and business?
Massive,
Like,
massive. One of the biggest catalysts, I think, of the generation, really. I mean, think about just the way we've been working. Most companies, my company included, all remote, haven't been into the office for over a year. So we've had to leverage Teams or Zoom or Slack or whatever video conferencing tool that you use for collaboration, for communication. We've obviously had to adapt our businesses' distribution channels or how we sell. Physical outlets have had to close. We've had to pivot to online sales. Our distribution supply chains have been disrupted. Maybe factories have shut down. So we've had to think about how we do just in time, or how we diversify and add resilience into our supply chains. Our customers have changed. They can't come and visit the store now. They have different expectations about delivery. I mean, I've ordered all sorts of stuff over
yeah,
COVID. I would never have ordered pre-COVID, and I'm a tech guy. So if I'm doing that, then imagine what the kind of paradigm shift. I have neighbors who are in their 80s who are doing online grocery shopping. Never would
yeah,
have happened. So the tip into online services, I think, is there forever now. I think it's going to completely change the next generation of businesses and consumers. And I do believe it will be at the expense of physical outlets. I think we'll see far fewer physical shops, outlets, malls. I mean, there will always be a place for that, but I think it is massively reduced. And my children, who are 12 and 10, they will do everything online. If it's not online, they're not interested. So I think it's just
yeah,
accelerated the inevitable. I mean, since the early 90s, we've obviously, Amazon was 1990. So we've had that kind of slow movement. I think Amazon makes up 50% of US retail. So, but that's just completely tipped that over with COVID now. Huge shift.
it is pretty dramatic, isn't it? And I think like I was like, previously looking online for jobs and like before COVID, there wasn't many remote working jobs. It wasn't, perhaps you could take like a few days off at home and do work from home, but now there's like it's just exploded because I suppose as well with businesses, I mean, I'm not too sure how much office space costs, but I'm pretty damn sure it's pretty expensive in some places depending on where you are. But you think like if you can cut down on costs for that and do virtual, and I think people are quite used to probably working at home now, and a lot of people, like you said, don't want to go shopping. They you can sit home and click a button and get it next day. You can with grocery shopping, especially older people don't want to probably go out, so you think, well, yeah, they can order online. So it's a no-brainer, isn't it? But it's pretty amazing how it's all kind of shifted and adapted. And I think like what you mentioned and how you kind of had to, work in your business, it makes me realize how kind of resilient and how adaptable, how we are as people, human beings, like how we can adapt to situations and create something else. I find it pretty amazing.
Yeah, I'm incredibly proud of my team. The way, I mean, obviously all teams, but my
Mm,
team specifically, like the way they've adapted has been absolutely phenomenal. I think there are some huge advantages to remote working, or so-called hybrid working, with a few days in the office and a few days at home. I personally have noticed that I have access to a much wider variety of talent. So I can hire people overseas now, which I wouldn't have been able to do before. I can hire
mm,
people who would like to work part-time, be that mums at home, dads at home, people who have other commitments where they couldn't kind of come to an office 5 days a week. I think the level of diversity and the range of talent that you have access to is brilliant. And I'm personally finding some really great people who probably wouldn't have come through and wanted to join an organization previously. Now they're thinking, well, if it's 2 days a day, 2 days a week in the office, or perhaps less, I can fit my busy life schedule, family schedule, care schedule, whatever it is that they have in their lives, as well as their work, which obviously we all do. We all have a life outside of work. So I think that's fantastic. I mean, it's absolutely brilliant. And I think long may it continue.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think it's definitely that balance, isn't it? That work life and, kind of out of work kind of balance, isn't it? Like, and I think people definitely finding that, able to adapt and, have more time with their family. I think that's a big thing, more time to do X, Y, Z, alongside work. I think that's great. And there's definitely a silver lining to, I think, to the situation as well. And, for me, especially with, the podcasts, I probably wouldn't be doing this, as much, if it wasn't for COVID. But like with your book, like what kind of got you into doing the book and like what's that about?
Yeah, that was a a snowball project. I wanted to write a book, well, since my early 20s, and then kids came along and work and never quite got round to it. So a good friend of mine who co-wrote the book with me, we decided about 5 years ago that we weren't going to write a book. We were going to write like a short field manual, like some notes and some musings for our existing teams and for our clients. Basically, just trying to culminate all of the experience that we've had. We've done over $1 billion worth of change and transformation technology work. We said, you know what, we're going to pull that together into some trends, some advice for our clients and for our teams. And 5 years later, we're writing a book. It took 5 years. It took a long time because we didn't do it full time. We wanted to make sure that it was right. We wanted to make sure the content was really high quality. And it was, for me, it wasn't about making money. It wasn't about the book itself. It was about putting down my thoughts for my children or for people that I know or for the next generation, my grandkids, and go, look, this is something that I did. It's an incredibly visual book. We wanted to make something that looked beautiful. Lots of diagrams, there's over 150 diagrams and illustrations, worked with an incredible designer, hugely talented, who kind of brought it all together for us. Yeah, it was a great experience. I mean, I've written an incredibly long blog post on how to write a book, and the process itself was fascinating. Do you use a self-publishing? Do you use a traditional publisher? We used a hybrid publisher. How do you do a book launch? The distribution, getting it into Amazon or Barnes and Noble or whoever else it might be, Waterstones. Great process to go through. Would I do it again? No. Am I glad that I did it? Yes, I'm very pleased that I did do it.
That's awesome. And like, what's the title of it again? Because I did see it on your LinkedIn banner. Like,
it's called the Hero Transformation Playbook. It's a way of doing large-scale transformation and change in a repeatable way, because we found that 80 to 90% of transformations fail, and we thought that's an incredible waste of money, time, and energy. So we thought, is there a way that we could codify transformations to make them more successful, with the ultimate aim of having more companies going through successful transformations means more successful companies, which means more prosperity for future generations and hopefully better jobs for our children, etc. So this was, I don't like the word legacy, but it was hopefully something that would benefit the next generation more than anything. If we can get more transformations over the line, obviously the book will play a tiny part in that. I'm not some grandiose dream that we're going to change the world, but if we can get 1 or 2 transformations that succeed, hopefully that creates a couple more better companies that survive and thrive, create jobs, create prosperity for people.
No, I love that. And I think, it's really great that, you stuck with it in that process, because it's a process, isn't it? And, it took 5 years. And I think like, you have to kind of be dedicated to it and, have the right people around you. And I think that's a big thing, isn't it? Probably the people supporting you in it as well. And, saying this is a good idea, and working with, good people and good companies. And, I know a few people who've written books and they said, it's very difficult. But, you've got it out and it's rewarding, and it must be good, to have feedback from it and, to put something out there that people can, develop from and use.
Yeah, it's great and it's scary to put something out there when you put yourself out there like that. Of course, there'll be people that don't like it and criticize
Yeah.
it and have a different point of view. This comes back to the tennis point. I'm pretty resilient. People don't like it, it's their business. I mean, you're never going to
Yeah.
please everyone. It's not for everyone. We didn't write it for everyone. It's not a bestseller. Well, it was actually a bestseller, but it was never going to sell like a million copies,
Yeah.
like a kind of fiction book, like a Harry Potter. Never going to do that.
Yeah.
We wrote it for a very small population of people,
Yeah.
senior leaders, probably in technology, that are going to lead and run large-scale transformations for their business. And it's a very divisive topic. How do you run a transformation? Lots of people have lots of views. So there was always going to be people who didn't like it. There was always going to be people who loved it, and hopefully there's a group of people in between
Yeah.
who just really enjoy it.
Yeah. No, definitely. And like I was thinking as well, like you mentioned tennis before, and like I was thinking about failure, and like, do you think? I mean, people talk about it quite a lot. When you fail at things, and through your tennis experience, do you think that helped you kind of gain that resilience, in business and like fails? Because you're going to fail, in life. It happens. But do you think like kind of tennis helped you in that business aspect? Because like you're gaining resilience, if for failing matches. I think some people go into business or into certain projects and they just think it's kind of this is the way it's just going to go, and it doesn't always kind of go that way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, my tennis coach when I was about 13 years old, he said the winners party and the losers ponder. And whilst I don't set out to fail, I don't set out to lose, it's inevitable. It will happen. So what I found was when I did lose, you do a lot of soul searching, you do a lot of introspection, and you take some quite radical changes and you can make some quite big changes. If you're winning and you keep winning, it's very hard to experiment. It's very hard to make fundamental changes, even when you know they're needed. It's really hard.
Mm.
So I think what I learned about tennis was I learned about experimentation, the power of experimentation. Change something, see if it works. If it does work, do more of it. If it doesn't work, discard it very quickly. But keep that cycle very short. Don't wait 2 years. You've got to do that intra-day, intra-week. And I think bringing that approach to business is absolutely critical. One of the most important lessons I have is the concept in agile is called retrospective or inspection, inspect and adapt. So look at where you want to go, look at where you are, take some action. If you're getting closer to your end result, be that lower cost, higher profit, whatever it is, high customer satisfaction, do more of it, double down, invest in it. If it's not working, very quickly discard it. So your waste of effort and your wasted money is very low. And I think having that discipline, it's very simple. It's very simple to understand. It's very hard to actually do. To have that rigorous approach to I'm measuring everything, I'm testing everything, I'm seeing if I'm getting closer. In business, it's very hard to measure everything. That discipline takes a lot of energy, and people kind of give up halfway through.
Yeah. I think that's really cool. You mentioned like, if something isn't working then, or, notice it and, change it. Like, don't wait kind of too long until, because then you could lose profits, money, staff, X, Y, Z. I think that's what, some businesses don't do, isn't it? You see on these programs where, they're losing money and they're not they know what it is, but they're not changing it or for whatever reason, So I think that's a really great point. Um, and as well, like, do you have any like role models or like mentors, like growing up or now?
I know.
That's a bit of a big
Yeah,
question, but
yeah, it is. It is. I mean, it's one of those things, and I think it's finally turning a corner for me. But one of the people who I admired and emulated was Alan Turing. Obviously, the almost the
yeah,
called the inventor of the modern computer. Or obviously, I'm a techie guy. He was the person that quite invented computing, but was a very strong catalyst for it. Exceptionally bright, exceptionally talented. Never really got the credit that he deserved because of his sexuality and because of some of the other beliefs at the time about him. And I think that's finally changing. I saw that he's going to be on the new note that's coming out. I think it's the £50 note, or I can't remember, the £20 note.
yeah,
Yeah, which is fantastic to see him celebrated, because his contribution to the technology and computing industry is unparalleled, really. I mean, absolutely brilliant. So I had a huge interest in Alan Turing when I was growing up as a young technologist. Massive passion for Nelson Mandela. My mum is African. She's Indian, but she was born in Africa.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
I have that kind of African element coming through my childhood and my upbringing, and mum hugely, fiercely passionate African. Of course, I'm going to pick Nelson Mandela, iconic person of in history, hugely influential on my mum and therefore influential on me. And a bit of a wild card one, which not many people talk about actually, but for me, Michael Johnson was one of the biggest role models I had growing up. Michael Johnson, obviously the world record 200 meter, 400 meter decorated Olympian in Atlanta 96, obviously broke records and won so many medals. I read his book when I was a teenager growing up, and it's I think it's called Slaying the Dragon.
Yeah, yeah.
Amazing book. And what I learned from him was just the unbelievable discipline that he had. I think over the course of his career, don't quote me on this, but over the course of his entire career, he only shaved something like a few seconds or half a second off his 400 meter time. And so his entire life was dedicated to taking half a second or a second off of his time. And he wrote something that really resonated with me. He hated weight training. He absolutely hated weight training. But what he wrote in his book, I'm sure it's true, whether it's true or not, it really touched me as a young person growing up. He said he never missed a weight training session. He never missed a set. He never missed a rep. Because he said that discipline is doing what needs to be done, even if you don't want to do it. And that just absolutely blew my mind. And I was like, that has really stayed with me. And I think a lot of people will, when they kind of try and characterize me, I think discipline is one of those things that they will call out about me. And I think a lot of that is driven from reading that book and just reading that passage. It's strange how that just one sentence just completely could transform the rest of your life and your character. Maybe I was predisposed to it anyway. It's hard to work out the cause and effect. But anyway, there's the anecdote.
No, I think they're really great role models, and I think like discipline is key. I think like you can relate that kind of fitness aspect and weight training is definitely real. And I think like when you do things that are uncomfortable, like sometimes we want to avoid the things that are uncomfortable, but like when you do them, you see that growth. And I think, like you said, not missing a rep, you can apply that to so much. And I think sometimes when things challenge you, it's like saying to yourself, that this is, I know deep down, it's going to maybe grow, or develop, and I think discipline's really important. Like self-discipline. I think if you want to improve or get somewhere in life, you kind of you need that element of discipline. And I definitely learned that when I worked in restaurants. And, you have to be disciplined, to kind of do as you're told, to do the job well. But anyway, but like no, I really like those examples. And what would you say kind of like happiness is for you, or like success? I know it's different for each person, but
yeah, I'm happiest when I'm learning new things, new experiences, new skills. I'm quite an obsessive personality. So when I learn something, I like to get really good at it, and I read about it, and I watch videos, and I study it.
yeah,
And I'm kind of that way inclined. So I love learning new things about
yeah,
topics that I'm not interested in, topics that I am interested in, just anything where my brain is going, oh, that's new. I'm kind of just wired that way. So that is a lot of happiness for me. I like hanging out with my friends and family. Obviously, that's a really big part of me. It's lovely seeing the kids grow up and see how they grow and evolve and take their own path in life. And sometimes it's not what you would want or what you expect or how you would do it. And that's part of being a parent is letting that go and letting them choose their own path and find their own happiness. I love being in nature. Love going for walks, especially mountain walking. It's how I met my wife. We're both avid mountain walkers. Haven't done so much of that since the kids were born, but now they're getting older. We're starting to do a lot more of that, which is a lot of fun. And I'm not very good at it, but I like appreciating the little things because our life is so fast. There's always something to distract us, but just appreciating the little things, a nice meal, the leaves in the trees, seeing your garden grow, seeing someone smile, whatever it might be, a touching news story, just appreciating those little things and just taking a little bit of time. And I'm not good at this. I'm the first person to say I'm not good at this. I'm very go, go, go. Let's get it done. But I do feel when I do that, I do feel that sense of that grounding and that sense of appreciation. And whilst I'm not good at it, it definitely does make me happy.
Yeah. No, I really like those. I really like those examples, and I think, you know, it's pretty amazing how you make your wife like mountain walking. Like that's, like
Yeah,
you
very
think
passionate for mountain walking. Yeah.
that's incredible, and I think like, like here's the small things as well, isn't it? That gratitude and noticing, those small things. Those small things can be quite big things, and I think that's something that I'm learning to do as well. I think like the sunshine, or we're from England, so the weather's not always great, but but like the sunshine, your garden, like conversations with people, I'm really grateful to do this with you. So it's noticing those things that may be small or quite big, and I think like I find that with driving sometimes, or having conversations with someone in a car, those little small things, or a walk with your family, are really, really, really important. And I think, that gratitude is quite grounding, isn't it? Like you said, you have to kind of, being around nature as well. It's very, it's good for your mental health as well, I find.
Yeah, I think that is one of, if we can look for upside in COVID, it's because one thing is we've had to find some happiness and some interest and some entertainment in things that are a bit more mundane, because we've had no opportunity to go bowling or go to the cinema or go out with friends or go to a bar or whatever it is that you like to do. So I think that has been one of the things we have had to look very hard for opportunities to connect as a family and connect with friends remotely and do things that make us feel good whilst not having as much stimulus and as much external entertainment, as it will. And I think hopefully we hang on to some of that. And it's very easy to slip back into the old ways, isn't it? Obviously, I've included, but I hope we hang on to some of that. I hope we kind of keep some of that in our culture and in our lifestyle. It's going to be very hard to do, but I hope we do.
Yeah, no, definitely. I definitely agree. And do you have any of my favorite books? I mean, I know this is a hard question, but I know if you could pick like a couple of books that you like to read or have read.
Oh God, I spent a lot of time reading books, and it's like when you ask, I'm sure there are some that I'm missing, but two come to mind. So, Awaken the Giant Within by Anthony Robbins. So, Anthony Robbins being a very big, call him a self-help guru. He's not really. He's someone who helps you understand your brain and how you can kind of code that for your own happiness and success. Obviously, he's hugely popular in America, and I read his book when I was probably 14 or 15, and that really helped me kind of decouple from being a child or young adult into becoming a kind of my own man. How I rewired my brain and understood what was driving me and what I wanted to do with my life. I think that was really, really impactful. I managed to scrape some money together to go to one of his seminars when I was 16 or 17. And it's pretty cool, pretty life-changing. It was a really great experience. I thoroughly recommend it if you can go. So his book obviously was really great. The other one I really like actually is something called Winning Ugly. Again, on a tennis theme. It's written by a guy called Brad Gilbert. He was a tennis player in I want to say the 1990s. And he had this horrible tennis style. Like everyone who looked at him thought, this guy's a joke. How could he win tennis matches? But he was a top tier tennis player. I think he was top 10 in the world actually at one point. And what I loved about it is he would find a way to win, even though he was nowhere near as good as his opponent. And I really love that. I really love the fact that he was finding ways to win whilst he didn't have the most talent, he didn't have the best strokes, he didn't have the best technique, yet he would consistently beat players better than him. And I found that fascinating. And I read that book so many times as a young tennis player. It was, I mean, literally the book fell apart. I had to buy a new copy recently because I went to take it off the shelf and it was literally like dust. It's
Yeah.
so annotated and leafed through. It's a great book. It doesn't have to be. I mean, obviously it's a tennis book, but the lessons can be taken beyond tennis. The fact that there's all like everything you do is a bit of a puzzle. And let's not put it in winning and losing terms, because obviously tennis is competitive. But if you're not doing something competitive, everything is a puzzle, and it doesn't matter your level of skill or your level of ability. You can get something done with enough curiosity, dedication, discipline, and really open mind. So I really like that book. It's really cool.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And you know, this I've read the first one. I think I was probably around the same age when I read the Tony Robbins one. He's a really great guy, and you know, he's quite transformative, isn't he, in what he does? And you know, like I think so many people are kind of modeling kind of his kind of framework, aren't they, and how he kind of works. And you know, I think the tennis one sounds really great as well. And I think, like you said, that mindset, and you know, that with the, like you said, the guy wasn't as good as you know the other people, but he was still kind of beating them and kind of trying to get one up. And I think that's something that I see in sport quite a lot. Like, do you ever watch UFC or fighting or boxing? Like you see some of these people, and like Conor McGregor, for example, he got beat by that other guy not too long ago, and you think, like, where did that come from? But then I think he said it was down to like inactivity, if that makes sense. That's like I think one of the key things that um, is why sometimes athletes probably fail, because of their that space and time where they're not training or they're not doing anything. Where it's like it, but I think like it's so fascinating when you see in the sports world people who come out of nowhere. And it must be difficult, being that person who's at the top. I mean, you have to kind of keep that reign, keep that crown, so to speak. And, you know, and sometimes they fail and, they come back. It must be very, very difficult being in that place, because you're constantly kind of competing with yourself all the time, aren't you, as well, trying to do better.
Yeah, I mean, I think weirdly getting to the top is, I won't say it's easy, but it's easier than staying at the top. And that's why
Yeah.
you see that a lot. I mean, think of UFC, think of Johnny Bones Jones. He's self-destructed so many times because he's been at the top and he doesn't quite have a weight. I mean, I don't know him. I don't profess.
Yeah. Yeah.
What I observe outside in is he's obviously looking for something that he's not finding, just because he's now at the top and he doesn't quite know what to do to kind of stay there. And that's why I have admiration for people like, again, I'm going to pick tennis because I'm a tennis player,
Yeah.
the Nadals, the Djokovic's of the world. If you want
Yeah.
to pick another sport or in any other arena, you can, but obviously that touches me. But they've been there for so long, and when you look
Yeah.
at them when they started to look at them today, how they've evolved and continue to evolve and have that hunger and that desire to keep driving, to keep learning, to keep getting. I just find that inspirational.
Yeah.
They could have retired a long time ago on their gazillions of
Yeah.
pounds, but they don't. There's something inside them that is driving them, and I just find that impressive and admirable.
I think that's what I find really inspiring with tennis as well. I used to watch Tim Henman play, not in person but on TV. Another guy, I can't remember his name, the Scottish guy, quite young,
Andy Murray.
Andy Murray. Yeah, watching him play, and you see like the grit, and it's in Wimbledon. You got these tournaments that last for ages. The sun's beating down on them. There's so many elements, and you got people watching you as well. There's people watching you on TV. You think, geez, like and you just have to show up, don't you, and just do your best. And I think you can, as I said, you can learn a lot from sports, and a lot of it is your mindset, isn't it? Your health and all of that. And I don't want to go off topic too much, but we're talking about technology. Like I play video games, and you see the graphics in video games, and you see it blows me away. When some of these games come out, it looks real, and you must see this as well. Um, did you see that thing with Cyberpunk? Did you hear about what happened with that company? They released the game, and it was being made for a long time, and it failed. and there were still bugs, in the game when it came out. Shareholder, the light of the shareholders, shareholder problems, all of this, and if you type it in the internet, it's everywhere. Um, like with technology and video game companies, do you look much into that? Do you think there's like a big competition with technology, video games, and because sometimes video game companies release the same games and people get bored of it. So, have you looked into much of that? Do you take much interest in that at all with
Definitely,
technology?
it's clever the way the video game industry has evolved. If you think about how it used to be run, you sell your hardware at a loss leader. So you buy your PlayStation or your Xbox at a loss, and then you make money on the games. But you're making money on the games one time at point of purchase. So when you buy a game, you get some money, and that's shared between the game maker and the hardware distributor, be that Xbox, be that PlayStation, whoever it is, Sony, whoever it might be. I think that's really interesting. And what we've seen happen is we've seen the likes of Epic Games who have come in and completely changed the model. And I think that is very impressive on a technological level, but it's more impressive the way they've thought about the business model. I see my children spend ridiculous amounts of money buying virtual currencies, buying dances, buying skins in Fortnite, buying
Yeah,
packs in Minecraft. The business model has moved on exponentially, and I think that's very smart. I think they've used technology to drive completely and fundamentally different business models, and I think that is very clever. And it's way more profitable because if you're buying virtual currency to the company, the marginal cost is almost zero.
yeah,
It costs them almost nothing, but they're getting real currency, dollars, pounds, whatever it is, as a
mm,
result. I think that's very, very clever. And I think the way they've used gamification, they've used immersive design, they've used a lot of psychologists in some instances to make their games, I won't say addictive, but they'll make them very compelling to play. Uh,
mm,
very, very much that you want to go back. They're changing graphics, they're running faster updates. And you think about something like Epic Games and Fortnite, they're running updates very, very frequently. They're changing the guns, they're changing the maps.
mm,
Minecraft, they're bringing out new packs and new mods. These are the only
mm.
games I really know about. So
Yeah, yeah,
it's very interesting. And I know that one of the largest private equity firms in the world, KKR, they took a stake in Epic Games. I mean, that's how mainstream
wow,
it has become now. And I looked, I can't remember the numbers, but the amount of free cash that Epic Games generates is phenomenal because they've got cost of servers, they've got cost of developers, but
yeah,
that's not a significant cost compared to the amount of cash that they're bringing in from people spending on skins and all sorts of other stuff, which to
yeah.
them is in effect free. It's a genius business model.
It is. It is pretty amazing, isn't it, when you think about it? And I've seen that with Rockstar games with that Grand Theft Auto game online.
Yeah.
I don't know what the statistics were, but they've made a ridiculous amount of money off the online, and it's like a 7 or 8, probably older. It came out years ago, and they're still making a lot of money. People still play it, and as you said, these in-game currencies keep people wanting more. They update it, and um, like I play that PUBG, similar to Fortnite, and it is quite addictive because there's a different outcome each time you play. It's not always the same, and they're moving the game to the, I think, stock market. They're on about putting stocks and shares in because it's doing so well, and they're making like £5 million on the mobile version of it, and you think it's just sitting there. And people are paying a lot of money, so it is interesting, isn't it, to see where technology is going. And have you heard about NFTs? Those non-fungible tokens that are coming out. Those online. This is very recent. These like an image, and people can have um, the rights to that image, and they can sell it. What do you think to that? Do you? I mean, have you heard much about that? Like,
Yeah, a little. I think this is the skill of technology, isn't it? It's to work out which technological trends are ready for prime time. Now, for me, there's a whole load of technological trends. Let's take cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin.
yeah,
I'm still yet to be convinced. Now, I'm not saying it's not valuable. I'm not saying you can't make money from
yeah,
it. I'm still unconvinced how the average business of, let's say, 3 to
Yeah.
$500 million in revenue, how they can use virtual currencies to increase their business performance or improve their
Yeah.
P&L, make their company more valuable. Now, is that because I'm not clever enough? Perhaps, but I'm not seeing many people do that. So I think with a lot of these
Yeah.
technologies, the skill is, as a technologist, I'm super interested. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
My job is not to be a technologist. My job is to translate technology into measurable business value. And I
Yeah.
can't see a way yet that that can be done. Now, will that be the case in 3 years' time? Who knows? So my
Yeah.
job is to continually track all of these trends. And when they're ready for prime time, when they can really drive value for a business, then that's when I will start to promote them, and that's when I'll start to recommend them, because there's so much technology out there that has been around for a long time that can drive measurable business results, that
Yeah.
focus on those. I mean, artificial intelligence, machine learning, cloud computing, distributed computing, whatever it might be. These are real low hanging fruits. Use of SaaS software instead of on-premise. Like there's a whole load of technology out there that you can use today that will drive huge benefits. Large scale data platforms. I mean, different ways of securing your infrastructure using modern tooling. I mean, there's a whole load of stuff that is no brainer that you know will drive measurable business results. I mean, I was talking to a company yesterday that they can reduce your automated testing by 10%. They almost guarantee it. It's a no-brainer. So if you're spending, let's say, 4% of your IT budget on testing, they can take 5% off that. No-brainer. Let's do that. The Bitcoins and the virtual currencies and non-fungible tokens, maybe they'll be there in 5 years. Maybe I'll be able to say, right, do that and it will have this impact on your business. Today I can't, so I won't recommend it.
Yeah.
That's not to say
Yeah.
we shouldn't talk about it. That's not to say we shouldn't explore it. That's not to say we
Yeah.
should experiment, but it's not something I'd recommend to the vast majority of people I work with.
It's a gamble, isn't it? Because I think like you could invest, I don't know, for example, say £20,000, and it might go, it might blow up, it might not, and I think it's a very big gamble. And I think Elon Musk has the assets to be able to do that because he's got the assets. You know, he can chuck however much he wants to it. You know, and he's got like a following as well, so people kind of jump on it. But I think it isn't like secure in some sense. You know, it's very new, very early. Um, um, do you have like a favorite technology? How can I put into words? Do you have like, if you could pick like say a favorite technology or something that kind of interests you, do you kind of have one in mind? That makes sense. And
Yeah,
that's a very kind of broad.
yeah, that is a very tough question. I love cloud computing. I love the way that it can massively accelerate software development. I love the fact that you can store vast amounts of data for pennies. I love the fact that you can spin it up so quickly and shut it down so quickly. And just, sorry, that was remiss of me. I should explain what cloud computing is. So in the past, people used to hold their software and their data on what we call an on-premise computer. So that was literally a computer that you had in your office or in a data center that you owned. That was your computer. You could go up and you could touch it and you could do whatever you wanted. So that was good in one way because it was your computer, you owned it. The problem is if you had, let's say, 100 units of computing power and you wanted to suddenly go to 200, you couldn't. Let's say you had 100 units of computing power on your on-premise server and you were only using 30. That means you were wasting 70. So cloud computing allows you to borrow other people's computing power, namely Microsoft Azure, Amazon Web Services, or Google Cloud. And you're using their computer power, but you can turn it on and turn it off on demand. So you can spin up a huge Databricks cluster, run a massive amount of data analysis for a very short period of time, pay a few pounds, and then shut it down again. You can store huge amounts of data, and if you want to delete it, you can turn it off. You can spike, let's say you get a whole load of press to your website, you want to spike your load balancers to allow for all that new traffic, then you can do that. It's really, really cool, and it allows people to enter the market so much more cheaply. Anyone can start building software these days. They don't have to own their own data center. They can just get a Google account, get an Amazon account, get an Azure account and start doing it. And I think the democratization of that is what I love the most about cloud computing.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point as well. And I think that's something that I've realized a lot. You know, I have a Google account and I have like I think I pay a couple of pounds a month and I get like, is it 60 gigabytes of cloud data? And it's like, you
Amazingly
can just
cheap.
take yeah, you can take photos. It doesn't hold up your space on your phone. It just uploads it.
Great.
Um, especially with Zoom, you even have cloud data on there. I even found out there's cloud data on the PlayStation. You can transfer your saves to a cloud which has 100 GB on it for free. It's crazy, but it's amazing. Like that we can do that because, like you said, years ago, you only had so much space on the computer or whatever you were using. But yeah, it's fascinating. I've always been into technology as well. It's amazing to see where it goes. I mean, I think it's like a tool, isn't it? I was talking to my brother about this yesterday, and he was talking about technology, and I said, it's a tool, really. Sometimes how you kind of use it, and I've heard. I won't go too much into it, but I've heard stories about the deep web and all of that kind of thing, and that's pretty. It's pretty frightening what some people can do with technology. If it's in the wrong hands, and I think we've seen that with cyber attacks. We've seen that. I mean, that's what happened with that games company. Someone cyber attacked the company, took that. I don't know what source codes are or what they mean, but they took the source code and sold them on the dark web, and they held them to ransom. And you think, like, have you seen this with companies that you kind of have to help them when that? I don't know if you deal with cybersecurity, but to make people aware that this is a thing, in the 21st century, isn't it, in business? Because I think we've seen a few attacks on quite big companies.
Yeah, I mean, cyber is one of the fastest growing topic of concern for senior leaders in businesses, not technology leaders, for senior leaders, period. CFO, CEO, investors, boards, whoever it is one of the biggest things that worries them. Yeah, cyber's hard. I mean, you've got to incorporate security by design into everything you build, into everything you do. You have to assume that you can and will be breached and have mitigations around it. I remember when I went to the Microsoft Cyber Operations Center out in
Wow,
USA, in
what an
Redmond.
experience!
Yeah,
Wow.
we have all these huge screens monitoring all the live cyber attacks. I think you have to assume that you will be penetrated, you will be attacked, someone will get into your network, get into your system, and you have to expect that and have teams around you that can deal with that. I love to run red teams. So you have a team who work for you, and their job is to hack into your systems. So it
Wow.
allows you to play your own kind of white knight hackers who are looking at your own.
Yeah.
You can pay people, you can have a community find vulnerabilities. A lot of services do this now. They say, hey, if you can find the vulnerability, we'll pay you 10 grand, whatever it might be. And that's worth their while to do that. So there are ways around it, but it is inevitable in this day and age that almost any computer system is hackable, assuming it's on a network on the internet.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
have to act like you have been hacked or you will be hacked. It's
Mm.
not if, it's when. And I think with that mentality comes a very different approach to security, infrastructure, networking,
Yeah.
application development, how you respond to threats. So I think it's
Mm.
really,
It's.
really important. Basic cyber hygiene is mandatory. Advanced cyber hygiene is almost mandatory as well.
I think that's the thing with people in business. People sometimes just go into business, and I think because it's quite a deep topic, and I think if people aren't too aware of it, they're not going to know much about it. So they're probably, it's probably why it happens quite a lot to some people. And I was seeing a pod. Do you ever watch Joe Rogan? I was watching Joe Rogan. He had the is it an ex CIA member, and he was talking about one of the next wars that may happen is going to be in the cyberspace. He said, and he said, in Texas, for example, or parts of America, they have a grid system. He said, China or other countries might hack, look into hacking, their is it grid supplies or their electrical supplies. If they hack into that, shut it down, there's no electricity and all the rest of it. So you can kind of see how important it is and kind of where it's kind of going.
Yeah, I mean, state-sponsored hacking or just hackers in general are phenomenally advanced, very well funded. I mean, just exceptionally skilled. It's pretty terrifying actually. It's pretty terrifying, and the amount of reliance that we now have on computers and the internet powers everything. powers medical devices in our body, it powers hospitals, power grids, security systems. I mean, critical infrastructure is massively at risk from cyber attacks. So I think that is one of the main things that companies should be investing in. I mean, I've talked at length today about how technology can drive business value, but it can also destroy business value. If you are hacked, it can have a phenomenal impact on your customer base, on your supplier base, on your brand perception, on your stock market value. I mean, it can be devastating. So it is something that people could or should be very focused on in the modern age, investing in heavily, taking very seriously, making a board imperative. And it's not just cyber, there's risk in general. So taking that and making it a board level imperative is critical in the modern technology and digital era.
Yeah, no, definitely. And like, so like kind of like round up as well. I was thinking, if you could like say, I don't want to put you on the spot, I know it's it can be quite difficult with these questions, but if you could say sit around a table with say 3 people who are alive, and you know have a conversation with them, who would that be? If you could like say think of a few people, you know, if you could sit around a table with them. I mean, if you can't think of anyone who's alive, then it's okay if they've passed on.
Yeah, I mean, I think Barack Obama would be someone who is just phenomenally inspirational. Obviously, he's had an incredible life and experience being in the White House. I think that would be something incredible to behold. I'm going to pick another politician, actually. I watched a documentary on her recently, Hillary Clinton. I don't pick US politicians for some reason, but her story was phenomenal. Like, she was an absolute trailblazer for kind of women in government, and her policies. I really resonate with her policies, and how she was treated by the media was just really unfair. But she's bounced back, and she's still active. She's still fighting the good fight. I've got a huge level of admiration for her as well. They're two that kind of jump top of mind. Again, if you're talking about people who are dead, love to talk to Alan Turing, as I mentioned. Winston Churchill would be a good one.
Yeah.
Really good one. I think someone from the suffragette movement as well. I think that would be really fun. Again, I think that's a really interesting period of time. How they quote unquote were deemed terrorists, and how they fought through. I think a lot of the people I talked through have come through a lot of adversity, but they really believed in their cause. I think that's something that I really resonate with when I think about people from history and people that I want to speak to. People who have fought the good fight, been really badly treated by the establishment or by the media, but you know what? They've kept going because they believe in it, and then it's had ripple effects for future generations because they were brave, because they stood up, because they did something that was really, really something that they felt deeply in their bones that was right.
No, I think that's a really great point. I think like, you know, you can definitely learn a lot from other people, can't you? And you know, their lives and their mistakes or what they've done, you know, and achieved. And I think it's quite inspirational when you think about it. And I'm just thinking like as well, where can people find you on, like say social media, like your website, and where can people find your book as well, like say Amazon?
Come say hello. I'm at harbott.com, harbott.com. You find me on Twitter, LinkedIn, Ariff Harbott. Book is on all major distributors, Kindle, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Waterstones, and you'll find it's called The Hero Transformation Playbook.
That's awesome. But no, Ariff, it's been an absolute pleasure like talking to you, and I wish you all the best in everything that you've done.
Thank you so much for having me. I've had a great deal of fun. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.